gay liberals versus conservative liberals, which is I think was the last video. So I'm very curious on this one, very much so. I don't know
The
much
other
about the
side
Muslim
is
faith
brainwashed.
personally.
Can the agreeers please step forward?
I think brainwash is a strong word, but I also obviously step forward. I was raised Muslim. I'm Iranian. My mom's side of the family, especially a lot of Iranians, they felt like they just had to become Muslim to obviously like adhere. And it's extreme what they're doing in Iran. Obviously, I'm not comparing, but I guess with brainwash, I also went to an Islamic school. So my really devout Muslim friends, it feels like brainwash. I have a friend who's hijabi, and I just like for her.
Bro, my eyes are at a very specific location on the screen. It's hard not to see it, bro. I'm just saying.
It feels like it wasn't a choice kind of vibe. It's just something you should do because of your family and because of the religion. But then she's also super devout Muslim. It's just a hairy topic.
Can the disagreeers please step forward?
Oh, it's I still got it on
brainwash is a very strong word, just like you said. Yet you still step forward.
1.5
I'm not
speed.
familiar
Let's put it
with
normal speed.
anyone on this set, so for me to call someone that I don't know brainwashed, I would feel that it's pretty disrespectful, especially not knowing where they came from, what their beliefs are, why their lifestyle is the way that it is. So I don't really see how that kind of goes together.
I just think any kind of philosophy that doesn't encourage you to ask questions, to challenge it, to seek further truth, I think that should automatically kind of be a little bit of a red flag to kind of say this is the one truth and
I think the best way to frame it is it can brainwash people. Like but to be fair, it's not the Muslim faith isn't the only one, obviously. All the religions can make someone like that.
everybody else might be getting maybe closer or further from the truth.
So while I see where you're coming from, I don't agree that people are brainwashed because I do not want to disrespect your experience. I think it may seem a certain way, but it might not be the truth for everybody. And I also want to touch up on you talked about how you can't question something. I think for me, for years, I really struggled with my faith. I don't remember being a child and praying because I have to pray, but praying because I felt like there were repercussions that I would have to face if I didn't pray. And it wasn't until I got to leave my house and go to college and experience Islam on my own that I had a good association with it. But I also believe that Islam is one of the religions that does encourage questioning. It says, if you have doubts, I will have answers.
I just wanted to make a note. This is and maybe it's my personal experience. Growing up Muslim, and I went to an Islamic academy. I was hijabi after 4th grade years. You have to be. And I had religion class every day. And I will just say, I feel like every question I had is met with, because the Quran says so. That's it. I date someone who's has no background in Islam or didn't grow up that way. You're gonna get met with, because the Quran says so, because Allah deems it so, and that is why.
The reason that I disagree that the other side is brainwashed is because I think for the other side to be brainwashed, there would have to be one specific truth.
Very interesting how people. It's so tough. If you feel like that you can't even express yourself, you can't even express. Maybe he just wants to be. But why even come on the platform? I don't know. Because my thing is, if you can't have the what's the word? The freedom to kind of express your personal opinion because of a perception from that ideology, then I think there's something to be said about the ideology, personally, or at the very least your community.
One version of Islam that no one can question and everyone accepts as the truth. I think that one truth doesn't exist and that different people believe in different versions of Islam. So because a lot of Muslims, including Muslim scholars, have been coming to different interpretations, and if you were brainwashed, you would not be able to come to that difference of opinion. You would simply follow what the scholars of the past said.
Hi, I'm Jade, and I'm a member of the Middle Ground Patreon, and I was chosen to read the next prompt. Women and men are equal in the eyes of Allah.
I think a lot of people misconstrue about Islam, and when they say that women are mistreated in Islam, it just comes from the fact that men and women were created for different purposes. Now that doesn't mean that one holds more value than the other, and that
It's outsider perspective. I'm just saying, it's tough for me to say it's equal when women can't even show their face in public. I'm just saying, okay, you have to give me the equation that the value of what women provide is brings it up to the men. I don't know about this one. I'm gonna have to hear a very good argument to see
one
if
is
I buy
seen
it.
as better.
As an atheist now, I still hold that Islam does come from a feminist place. You see women in positions of leadership. So despite my being on this side, I still appreciate that Islam has that perspective.
I grew up overseas. I grew up in Bangladesh, and growing up in a country that seemed like a lot of things are not fair for women, a lot of things are not fair for minorities. And I think I struggled with that thought, like, okay, if men and women are equal in the eyes of Allah, then why does this exist? And what I realized as I grew older was that we're also living in a society. So I definitely have to face the repercussions of like other people and the social construct that we have, right?
The systems outside of it.
Yeah, the system outside of it. So like, our experiences are a product of like what we believe in,
Exactly.
and but also like our position within the system. And I won't put the fact that like society sees women as not equal onto God and onto my.
Okay. Very valid argument, actually. She's saying that God doesn't see it. God sees men and women are equal, but the interpretation of the text that is in the Quran created a system that doesn't have them equal. I respect it.
My religion, because that's not what religion was meant to be. And I'm not going to say that Islam does not believe that women and men are not equal.
I respect it. I respect that.
This was one of the biggest topics that
New findings never
What was the
revealed before regarding
caused
January
me
6th.
to really doubt my faith. Looking at the Quran, looking at the authentic hadith, and also just from historical records as well. Men are allowed to have sex with female slaves. In Surah Nisa, verse 24.
Oh, hold on. Let's read this. This is in the Quran, ladies and gentlemen. And also forbidden to you are all married women except those women whom your right hands have come to possess. What?
It says, prohibited to men are married women except for what your right hand possesses. And your right hand possessions refers to female slaves. And we see multiple hadith of instances where the men have just.
What does this say, bro? Let me turn this captions on. Corpus of the sayings or traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, revered by Muslims as a major source of religious law and moral guidance.
Defeated the tribe, they have female war captives, and Muhammad allowed them to have sex with them. And that's probably going to be rape, because what woman would be consenting to sex in that situation?
I think too, like just thinking about the Quran and my upbringing, like I had every.
Nah, I need someone to come back, cause this is what you call this is a nail, and this is that right here is a coffin, bro. He got and he's like it. Oh man, oh, I don't know much about the Quran, so
Every day.
I did not know it
the
said
two
that.
biggest ones that stand out to me would be like the issue of the hijab, which I know a lot of people will counter. So the Quran says women have to cover the khaymar to cover up so that they don't tempt the men. And then I will say the Quran does technically say men's hijab is their gaze, the male gaze. And it just seems a little silly to me. Beyond that, like in the Quran, how men can have up to 4 wives, but women can't.
Oh, let me read this. If you fear that you shall not be able to deal justly with the orphans, marry women of your choice, 2 or 3 or 4. But if you feel that you shall not be able to deal justly, then only one, or that your right hand possesses. With he said, these are female slaves, that'll be more suitable to prevent you from doing it. Nah, bro. There's no way you convince me that 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 Islam sees men and women are equal. Nah, just these two verses alone, basically, is very clear that men and women are not equal. No, you're not
It's
selling me.
In the Islamic school, I want to say the azan, the call to prayer. All the boys in my class, they're like, we're going to do the call to prayer for this Friday. I'm ineligible because I'm a woman, apparently. Can't do the azan. I can't do the call to prayer. So just those, I would say, are my Quran-specific examples. And they're like, well, this is to protect women. I don't see that at all.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different points that you brought up. The first one being the hijab, which the woman is obligated to wear. And you talked about how the men have to lower their gaze, which is 100% right. The women also have to lower their gaze, and the men actually have their own hijab. So the men have their own parts of their body that needs to be covered as well. So obviously, men and women were created both physically different and psychologically, all different types of, they're different in every single way. There's different parts of the body that need to be covered because men are attracted to different things, women are attracted to different things, and it's to protect both sides. The second thing,
That was a terrible explanation. Women are attracted to faces too, my boys. I don't buy that. All right, come
that
on.
you brought up, I believe you mentioned you not being able to make the call to prayer. Once again, that's in order to protect the women, just because men can also be attracted to the voice of a woman. So,
Motherfucker, what? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean to blow up. That just sounded super ridiculous to me. I'm sorry. Okay.
that's the reason that that's not allowed. And I completely understand.
I guess women can't find deep, masculine voices attractive. I guess they can't find that attractive as well. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe their ears just don't work the same.
Understand that you being a young child, that's something that you wanted to do. And I mean, pre-puberty, in your household, with your family, that's something that you should feel free to practice. Make the call to prayer, do that in front of your father.
But if he's not looking at her, so he's definitely following it, because she said your gaze has to be down, but he is looking at her. I don't know. I don't know if all the guys are following these rules the same way. I don't know. So are these all? Who are the ex-Muslim? He's ex-Muslim. He's ex-Muslim. She's ex-Muslim. I forget. Is she Muslim? I forget which one's one.
They're your brothers, your uncles. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be in front of the whole entire mosque. So there may be things that you felt because you were a woman you were being limited to, but
I don't know.
there's
His
a
gaze
benefit
is
behind
meeting.
it. So it's about looking.
His
into
gaze
that.
is
I think
not.
this is bringing up an important.
They did not address anything that Kamir said. Kamir? I forget his name. They didn't address anything he said, and they didn't address her first point, her point regarding the multiple wives. They didn't address that at all. Maybe Jubilee cut it, because I'm getting to recognize Jubilee cuts certain things,
Important
but they
point of
didn't address it
contention
at all.
here with all the things that you're saying, and you keep bringing up that men and women are fundamentally different. Where is that coming from? Can I
Where's
ask
what
that?
coming from?
When you say those things,
When I say what?
men and women are fundamentally different in these very specific ways. Men are attracted to a woman's voice.
Okay, so scientifically, men and women are different. So if you were just look at someone, man, and I look at a woman, I'm pretty sure I would see some differences.
You'll see differences between two men, too. Hello, want to see a vid? Depends what the vid is.
As well as just scientifically, biologically, emotionally, psychologically. There's been studies because everyone started to question you being able to change your sex and be able to change your gender.
I
But
don't care about that
you were
right now.
created as a certain sex for a reason, and each.
So that's my point of contention here. There's nothing for me there. When you say that I was created for a specific purpose and a woman was created for a specific purpose, I would disagree completely. Why can't I fulfill those other purposes? When you start slowly building upon these layers of like roles, that prescriptive roles, that starts to create a system of oppression.
Yeah, well, in order
That's
for
how it's built.
Well, can I say for personally myself, I would say that his view of it is also an interpretation as much as there's merit to it. Covering my hair and my face for me was so that people see my personality and my intellect before they see my beauty or they see the things that they're attracted to.
Yeah.
Also, in my culture, I'm ethnically black.
Wait, you can guess what is happening and what they are saying. Once you got your final answer, I'll tell the answer. So, want the link? Wait, what? I'm so confused. I don't know what you're talking about.
Obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but our hair is very different from other races, and we go to great lengths to assimilate. And that was something that I personally struggled with before converting. So for me, yeah, it helped me gain confidence. I would be worried about, like, how does my face look? Is there something on my face? Or some of your
The crazy part to me is that men have these same concerns. Yes or no? I don't know what you're talking about, Kale. I don't understand what the system that you're referring to is. You can guess what is happening, what they are saying. Once you got your final answer, I'll tell the answer. So want the link. What? Like, what is going on here? I don't understand what is going on.
communication is also in your facial expression. So when you can't see some of it, you have to kind of, use your imagination a little bit. I like that mysteriousness. I like that, especially other men don't have that access because I have a fiance. I like that there's only one person who can see these parts of me. And that's what makes it special in a way. So the roles for men and women, it's not entirely just because
My problem from me, from her, and him, and this whole conversation is like I don't understand why it can't apply to the other side, right? Like, why can't that man have that same mystery? Why can't that man not worry about having a great jawline because this guy is a handsome man and trimmed up beard? Like, I don't know.
I want you to do it because I
get
said
it.
so. It's probably because it's to your benefit. If you look
Yeah,
further.
I want to add to your point that Allah actually says in the Quran that la ikraha fi din, like there's no compulsion in religion. So when you say that, why can't I do X, Y, Z? Like why can't I do the other role, for example, right? These are the things that because Allah expects you to, these are the things best for you. But it's not that you can't do these things.
But when you say it's best for me, there's a threat. The problem is there's always going to be an existential threat.
Saying it's best for you because it's what's best for society. So everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts in place for us, that we believe God, the reason that we have these specific, if you want to say, roles, because men complement women in a certain way and women complement men in a certain way.
But what I'm saying is he's not, when
let
you
me,
say
let me,
that
let me
though,
explain myself, all right? Let
Yeah,
me
go
give you
ahead,
a
go
very
ahead.
easy way to understand it. I'll use her point, right? So you mentioned that, for example, why can you not marry 4 husbands and why can I marry 4 wives, right? These things have less to do with equality or worthiness in the eyes of Allah and just individual sex differences. For example, if I have 4 wives, right, I can impregnate all of them and we'll all know who the father is and who the mother is. If you, for example, in this scenario, you have 4 husbands, we won't actually know who the father is. And also,
What? That is a terrible explanation. Not gonna lie. What they are doing, what they are saying. Guess what actions they are doing. I'll tell you what you got your answer. I don't. Okay, it's some type of guessing game based off a potential action or statement that might be made. Cool. I'm not really sure what the purpose of this is though. Like, what is this video for? Is this you just wanted to play a game? Is that what's going on?
Why is that important?
Why would that happen?
And
Why
how
would
does
we-
that make men and women equal in the eyes of Allah? Like that's what that's telling
so
you.
I'm saying we're equal, but we're different.
There's no knowing
No,
what the
you're
father
not.
is.
You're sick, bro. I'm not gonna lie. That was terrible. Here's the link. All right, let me see what you're referring to for a second. Hold on. Wait a minute. I'm so confused. But better yet, it's better I see myself to be confident on what's going on. Yeah, I'm not seeing the link. Send it again. So I can check out what's going on with this link. You can watch this after you're done. Send the link again so I can see what you're referring to. Kale the veggie. Because I'm still pretty confused on what you're asking.
Reducing women to the sole purpose of reproduction?
I don't think it's that. Men, you know, you can impregnate someone every day. And women, you know, we kind of have to stay pregnant for a while. And I feel like there would be like a mix up with
paternity
I understand
issues.
what you're saying,
like
but these are-
genetics. Like if it was just one man impregnating a bunch of women, you could have a society still.
I understand what
If it's just one man getting a bunch of women pregnant, you can have a society still. What? Like, what is the point being made? I'm so. Looks like your link is banned, so there's no way I can look it up. I can't see the link, so GG's for that. But I don't know what is going on. So it's okay for men to cheat as much as they want because men don't get pregnant and can continuously make other people pregnant. Couldn't you just make the argument that women can continuously get pregnant after the 9 months? Sure, it's going to take longer, but they can just keep on having babies. Like, what? You can have a society with one woman. It's just going to take longer. What? I don't understand this logic.
What you're saying, but these are such narrow, like, whataboutisms. These are such narrow circles.
So let me ask you a question.
No,
If-
but I want to
I'm sorry, I want to hear from Atia and Janet as well.
Yeah.
I think also here's just a food for thought, and I can guess the answer. Why don't y'all wear a hijab? Like, why can't men wear a hijab?
They are.
So I'm currently in hijab, right?
But I
So-
mean on your head. You have heads, women have heads.
So you consider that you're basically calling that hijab a headscarf. That's not
That's
what the
a
hijab
khimar,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean,
And once again, we already said that the hijab for men and women is different because we're both created physically different. So obviously the hijab for both of them is going to be
that
different.
statement is not really
And then
an
once again,
equality
you're
for me.
implying that the hijab is oppressive to women. So that's what you're implying when you're saying that why can't men do it? Because do you believe that the hijab is oppressive to women?
But in the deepest depths of my soul, yes, I understand it can be a choice. I do believe it's oppressive.
By you agreeing that, or by you saying that the hijab is oppressive to women, that's actually disrespectful to our women in the religion, because you're either implying that these women can't think for themselves, and that
He's avoiding answering the question, but so he's avoiding answering the question like 100%. So I mean, there's no.
they're just wearing this
is
hijab
just
because
going
they
in
That's
have
not
no
what I
have
mean
lack
at
of
all.
intellect.
No, I think.
Or you're saying that we're all forcing every single woman in the religion to wear this, and we're throwing this on their head.
No, and
I think we need to
I think
acknowledge
that's
how
just your
easily
I'm saying that's what you're.
influence
That's what
people
you're
are.
by saying that the women are being oppressed in the religion. That's because they have to wear the hijab.
It's not black and white
Can
like
I
that in
jump
my
in here
mind.
and ask? So these justifications that we are seeing for hijab, do these justifications really still have solid ground when we consider that the hijab was for only one class of women, free women? Slave women didn't wear hijab, and because men were allowed to have sex with slave women, they were being sexualized and objectified when Muslim men were considering whether they're going to purchase them.
Yeah, let me answer that. So to address your slavery point, I'll get
Kafir's cooking.
on that in a sec, all right? But the point that you're asking, if we are really equal, how could that be? And you were asking if we all had hijab, why do you have to cover your head with a khimar and I don't, right? A very simple example is if I expect a man and a woman to lift a heavy load, but the same load, that would be
Again, not answering the question. This is a very innocuous, but okay. All right, cool.
an equal, right? So we have to look at it as equality or equity. So what is equal in the eyes of Allah for a man is not going to be the same treatment for a woman. And I'm sure we understand
not
that if there
answering the
are
question.
differences in our sex,
You're not
then there
answering
has
the
to be difference in expectations and roles.
Maybe historically, but we live in.
He didn't answer the question at all, bro. Oh my God. I hate when people do that. When they know that they don't have a good answer for something, they just don't answer the question. Kafir is asking a very direct question, and they're not answering it. They're just like, yeah, I can't excuse the fact that we could sleep with female slaves. So I'm not gonna answer it or address it at all. Thumbs up. Because I think innately, I think his answer would be terrible. I think it would be like, because that's, men or women are different. That's why I could sleep with female slaves.
In a time where a lot of what you're saying
doing?
just isn't relevant.
So you
Why
know,
do
I'm
you
not
think
going to
that
be
they don't
found in a
have
situation.
Thank you. I would love to wrap this up, and I would love it if the women would wrap it up.
Put your foot down. I respect it.
I will say I feel like it's very rooted in when it comes to covering up. For example, it's to protect you, and if you are dressed immodestly, they might react a certain way. They're attracted to your voice. I just have to say, I am a lesbian, and I am not tempted by, like, in my mind, I don't see a woman walking down the street immodestly, and it's not rooted in equality. Like the prompt said, Allah sees both men and women as equal, and I don't hear that honestly at all.
And when you're saying,
Things you're
Okay,
saying.
pause.
said
Thank
women.
you.
I
I would
said
love.
women.
Sorry, speak for the whole
We're,
time.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. We're going to keep going, and
Yeah.
all of this is going to build on each other. I would really love to hear from Atiya.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. There are a couple points I want to touch up on.
Oh, so
I really appreciate the uncomfortable things that you brought up in this conversation, and I loved how a lot of you guys didn't respond. I couldn't respond myself.
Oh my God, Atia might be her and Kafir, bro. I love when people actually are here for the conversation, not to be right, not to be on top. I love when people are just here for the conversation and to kind of push the narrative forward. I love the fact that she just recognized that they were not answering the question. They just refused to answer the question, and she admits that I don't have a good answer for that. My respect meter is so high for that. Oh my goodness. There's a Clipper video, I don't know what it's called, goes 200 black men for only £2. Yes, sir, it's a clip. What? That's
And then
kinda odd,
she
yeah.
brought up a point, and then everyone kind of jumped onto that because that is something you guys could respond to. And I think there are uncomfortable things that especially us as women have questioned that a lot of times don't get answered. And then I also want to say you brought up a point,
I'm
or
so
we were
glad
talking
she
about
brought that up.
what she said was disrespectful to Muslim women. That's not true because women around the world have different experiences. There are women who are being forced to wear the hijab. You can't disregard somebody's life experience and be like, no, you don't live in that social area. You could live like this. When you're part of a system that you don't have that same level of openness to, it's hard to be it's hard to see that, you know?
It is impossible to live a 100% pure Islamic life in modern society.
Join our Middle Ground Patreon to watch this exclusive prompt.
I have lost relationships because
Wait,
watch
what's
this
the question?
of modern society.
It's impossible to live a 100% pure Islamic life in modern society. Respect.
Join our Middle Ground Patreon.
Relationships because of my current religious
I've lost
beliefs.
relationships with my current religious beliefs. I'm surprised not everybody didn't come up.
the relationships that I've lost would be relationships that I probably shouldn't have been in the first place. Once I became more strong in my faith, I had to cut those people off. So those are only relationships that I've lost. Yes, it hurt maybe at the time, but I look at it from the outside perspective. That was the decision that I had to make.
A relationship that I've lost is in a different sense than losing contact with them, but the relationship I lost with them is that I'm unable to be my true self around them. And that relationship is with my mother, and it's the reason why I'm in this ridiculous outfit today. Because if my mother ever found out that her only child is gonna go to hell forever because he left Islam, it's gonna hurt her so badly. I saw myself how much it hurt my mom when I was talking openly about my doubts in Islam in high school. It was causing her literal depression. The reason I continue to pretend and I don't really have the bravery to come out and be my true self around her is because she's the best mom I could have ever asked for. She worked so hard to raise me. She sacrificed so much to give me a really happy childhood. And the idea that I will be showing her that all her hard work was for nothing because her child is gonna burn in hell forever, I can't hurt her like that again like I hurt her in the past. She does
That's such an interesting situation. Like, it begs the question that certain people are rooted in certain ideological principles and beliefs that they kind of are ingrained into them, and they won't really change. Maybe grow, but never change. So at that point, do you try to, especially if they're like a good person to you specifically, and good person in general, it's just their beliefs are just out of whack, I guess, or different, I guess. Is it better to kind of continuously try to change their ideals, or let them live under a lie to kind of keep the sanctity of the relationship? It's a very tough situation, especially when it comes to family, right?
Doesn't deserve to be hurt. She deserves to be happy.
I would say I haven't lost any relationships as far as like dating, and I am no contact with my family, but it's actually not because of the difference in religion, it's because of a plethora of other things. I would say I went to that Islamic academy growing up, and ironically, it was the best years of my life. I had the best friends. When I went to a secular school, I'm from a conservative area, so I was the only Iranian, so they were bullying me for being hairy. And then when I went to the Islamic Academy, I didn't have that problem anymore. It wasn't until when I went to high school and I'm like distancing myself from Islam that a lot of people from our local community just kind of like, there's whispers of, oh, Janet's family is hypocrites. She's a whore because I don't dress modestly as they'd like me to, et cetera, et cetera. I've lost a lot of, I would say, my Muslim friends from the school.
Thank you for sharing, guys. I also want to say, I think I have a very similar experience with you. I would say that there were quite a few years of my life when I was really, really questioning my faith, but also like the way I grew up and what was like, I would say, forced upon me. And it was really hard because I felt like not myself. Because of how conservative my family was, as I grew older, we just started becoming like separated because of their viewpoints. And as they grew older, they became more and more religious. And to a point where I felt like sometimes, like if I'm trying to like share my feelings, something like that's really difficult. And I've gone through like very difficult situations in my life. I've been met with like so many religious things. I felt like misunderstood by my siblings a lot when I was questioning my religion. I felt like I had to keep that secret, and it wasn't until end of my high school career where like I was sitting with my best friend who is very Muslim and one of the best people I've ever met, and she was like the first person I shared, and it took so much courage to share that. And then she said, "You're not horrible for questioning your religion, you're just human." And I think that changed my life. And I think that's what I would say to anyone that's like watching this video. I would say that to anybody who's like questioning, like, you're just human. That does not make you bad. And like, especially if you're Muslim and you're like afraid of like what Allah thinks of you, Allah does not think of you badly.
So I just think I'm in a pretty privileged position. My dad's half Jewish, but baptized Catholic. My stepmom was raised Southern Baptist. I have Mormon cousins. I have Quaker family. I've just had to
Jesus, he is all over the spectrum.
all my life learn how to agree to disagree with certain things, and just be sensitive across beliefs. But that isn't to say I don't feel like I've lost some connection for sure with my really devout Muslim family. I haven't told them that I'm queer. My mother came out. She was married to a woman for a while, so they at least know that. But at least with the conservative part of my family, they've proven that they're not a safe space, and that's that.
I've lost some relationships because of me reverting. It's more so because people couldn't relate to me anymore, because I used to be very different. I used to be that girl who would like go to raves with my friends. My favorite rapper is Stunna Girl. Like I'm from Sacramento. Like I wasn't raised Muslim.
It's very interesting how people can become such a devout Muslim out of nowhere. So usually for me, what I think it's probably something really bad clicked and changed their whole way of life. those are typically what happens in these drastic changes where it's like I used to be like this, now I'm this. Something clicked, and usually it's a very big click, but sometimes it could be a little bit more a modest click, like where I think Tia said that her friend told her that you're just human. So
So all the
yeah.
friends that I had growing up and stuff, when I started to become a little bit more conservative or a little bit more intentional with the things that I wanted out of life,
Maybe it's her
they were
fiance
kind of like,
that
why
turned
don't
her.
you want to go with me to like, you know, clubbing or do this? And I'm like, because I want to have a family. Like, I want to make sure that I'm the type of person that I would choose if I was a man. And I realized that when I became an adult. And so because of that, we just went our separate ways.
Islamic views on homosexuality are outdated.
All of them came out.
So, I grew up in a pretty queer family. My South Asian family is very Muslim, and my mother and her sisters grew up in that environment. And all three of them turned out to be queer. I'm queer, my sister's queer. It was a long journey.
Wait, what? How does his entire family become queer? Like, what? What is going? Nah, bro. What is going on with his family to turn 4 people queer, bro? Nah, you're not born. I'm. Yeah, I don't know what's up with. Yeah, I don't. I man,
Of self-acceptance,
I'm not
and
gonna say anything
this is
else.
just who we are and who we've always been. When I
Jesus.
look at my grandfather,
The
he
fact that
and
his mother's
I
lesbian makes
have
me think.
strikingly similar stories. He admits that in his village it was normal for men before they were married to play around with each other, to have boyfriends, to experiment. But then after you were an adult, after you married, of course that was off the
To have
table.
boyfriends?
But I
Crazy.
kind of see, you know, almost 70 years apart, me and him both have the same stories. Early 20s, got to experiment with my sexuality, you know, now in a long-term relationship with a girl and very secure in that. But his experience was filled with shame that he then passed on to his daughters. So I see that and I feel bad for generations
Bro,
of
his
queer
family is
people who have been
fucked.
told that they can't be, or that maybe they can
Generations
be but they
of
can't act upon it because that is haram
it.
in some way. So queerness
Maybe
is
it
in our
is
blood,
genetic.
it's in our
Maybe he has
nature,
the
it's
gene.
across species, it's across time, it's across history, and religion through Islam, through Christianity, and through various other means have been used as tools to erase that queer history.
I agree. All Abrahamic, all religion in general, organized religion, I feel like it's not, you're gonna find it in Christianity and Judaism. I myself, I'm a lesbian. I didn't come out until I was older, like an adult. But a lot of that was rooted because I have such a devout Muslim family. It's like, if I come out, like my mind's going many places. It's not just gonna be like a normal American family coming out. Like I have very abrasive Muslim dad. I don't really see my gayness coinciding with religion, like an organized religion.
I think that Islam has no moral standing to say that 2 consenting queer adults can't be in love while allowing a man to have sexual relationships with his slave. I couldn't rationalize how that is okay.
Man, Kafir just be like, bro, ain't no way this text says you could screw slaves and then say gay people can't be with each other. Nah, what you got? This doesn't make sense. I respect it. Keep on harping on it
But
until they answer the
2
goddamn
gay or
question.
lesbian or whatever adults who are in a loving relationship, they're fully consensual, there's no power dynamic, that's bad.
Who's gonna answer first?
My question is, if it's okay for 2 consenting, for example, males who have love for each other to conduct sexual intercourse, then what is the problem with 2 brothers who have love for each other and they're consenting to have sex with
That's
each other?
not the same.
So instead of addressing, I see again, people try to play this little trap game, and that's what he's trying to do. Now, I do have a video on my YouTube channel where we had a segment where we talked about the difference between incest marriage and gay marriage, and it's a very tough question to find the differences between the two. For me, the genetic defects is pretty cutthroat for me personally. The genetic defects, it's very clear. But at the same time, you can make the same argument. Well, two men can have a kid, cannot have a kid, and two women cannot have a kid. So it to kind of be on his side a little bit, the similarities between incest and being gay are uncomfortably, for a lot of you people, hard to combat, right? My issue with him is he didn't address anything that Kafir said, because he wants to play the trap game. But at the same time, there is something to be said that incest and being gay, there's really not that many differences between the two. Let's be honest. Let's hear her say it's not the same thing, but what will be her explanation? Will she have one? I doubt it. It's a very tough question to answer. Let's hear.
How is it not the same?
Incest, and you're comparing incest and homosexuality. You're.
Please explain the difference.
I'm not gonna lie,
Explain
that's
the
really
difference.
offensive.
Either way,
offensive.
How is it
either way,
offensive?
That's
either way,
very
it's
offensive.
Explain the difference.
relevant.
Explain the difference. It's
I
very
could-
relevant
I could
because
maybe
it's
One is-
See, she can't. She doesn't know how to explain the difference. She doesn't have a logic behind it. It's uncomfortable. I know it's uncomfortable for you. I don't really like. I'm sympathetic to you being uncomfortable, but the reality is that it's a very hard determination of the two differences. Like, it's extremely hard to figure out. Like, I probably need a whole debate panel. I probably should have a whole debate panel. I probably will set one up maybe in the future, where we talk about what is the difference between incest and being gay, and see where we lead to. It's tough, bro. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but sometimes you need to be able to kind of figure out what, because this is gonna lead down a road in the future, potentially, right? And obviously, I have nothing against gay people. There's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. But we gotta be able to kind of address these things, especially moving forward in society. Once, like, the movement of incest lovers come out and go like, okay, what's the difference between my love for my sister and then a guy's love with another man? Like, what's the difference? Please explain. Nobody has an answer. It is what it is.
Objective morality.
One is, I've done a 23andMe. Me and my girlfriend are not related at all.
Okay.
So one is,
But what is the difference? What is the difference? They're both
Let's make
consenting
it
and they both
clear.
love each other.
Can I say something? Can I say
different-
something?
Yes.
That's as wrong as a brother and a sister consenting and having sex.
Exactly.
I
Okay,
agree.
so what's the
I
problem
agree.
with that?
What do you mean?
how,
I'm
you're
asking
comparing
how is-
incest
how
with
is-
homosexuality.
Okay, because they both
Well,
come
what
from the
is
same
the
point. There's
difference?
two
Oh,
people
they-
who consent to having sex together.
Yeah,
It's the same
exactly,
exact
yeah.
thing. So what's the
different-
difference?
There's
If they
There's
love
different methods of
scientifically-
socialization.
Can I
What
say
is the
something?
what is the problem with them if they both consenting and they both have love for each other, just like two males who don't know each
Hold on,
other
let her
have love
speak.
for each other? What is the problem?
I just want to
with
say, you just did this thing in public speaking called minimizing an issue, and then you're trying to find this correlation
what
that
I'm,
like
what I'm
simply
doing is
does not
actually
exist.
addressing the principle, which is coming from objective morality.
Yeah, just speak from your side. You didn't need to bring this up, but I think it is a very valid. I think the question is so tough to figure out, but people, it's a trigger thing. It's a trigger warning. He's not answering Kafir's question because he doesn't have an answer. They don't have an answer to his question either, but he doesn't want to lose. So, like she said, he's just using a debate tactic. He's not addressing the question. These are two separate questions. These are two separate scenarios. They are not related. Come from your point, and if you want to use a correlation analogy, then you can bring it in. But starting off with that, it's very obvious what you're doing.
So I'm trying to figure
There-
out
that's-
what I'm trying to
Yeah,
figure out
sure.
is
Yeah.
if this is wrong, if homosexuality is okay, then what makes incest not okay?
Let me tell you something. Let me say, what you are bringing up is not relevant. It is
How is it
not.
not
It
relevant?
has nothing
It's
to
not
do.
How is it not
incest
relevant?
does
It
not
has
have-
nothing to do
Can I
with
just
two
say
men
that-
who are not
It
related.
has everything to do
They're
with
not
it.
on the same
It has
principle.
everything to do with it.
Let's let people
Can I just
talk for
ask-
like at
But
least
when I want to
15
talk, I
let's
get
let her-
interrupted.
let
So
her-
no, we're not going to do
let her
that.
talk. You're interrupting
Yeah, so let's
everyone
all
too.
stop interrupting.
So it's
We're
really
gonna all-
offensive for you to
from
make
now
these
on-
arguments
from now
when you
on,
are
we're gonna
constantly
all
Every
interrupting.
time I
stop
speak, I'm getting
interrupting.
interrupted. I let y'all speak every single time, and then
Yes,
and then I
let's
speak.
have no
So
one
every-
interrupt
I
each
just want
other.
this question
Let's
answered.
have-
Like
let's have
simply
no
put,
one.
what's wrong with two brothers?
Can
having
I
incest?
answer
Like,
the
just
question?
simply.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so I feel like what it's
I see where they're coming from, but they're not coming from this. They're not coming from a point of trying to push the conversation forward. They're coming at the point of the moral, objective, high ground point, right? If they would have came at it, this is how I would have done it, even though I'm not gonna like I don't coincide with his beliefs. If I was gonna make that a overarching point on my beliefs behind it, I would come up and say, for me, homosexuality is not a good standard for the 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 values that I believe should be embedded in two individuals be having sex and having a relationship. Because I think the most important thing is starting a family, having kids, and all that stuff. I kind of see it personally, whether you agree or not. I see it similarly to incest, right? Two consenting adults having sex, but we know that they shouldn't have sex because the kid will have a genetic defect and it will be problematic. It's very similar to men and women. Two men having sex, no kid will be born. Two women having sex, no kid will be born. So that is my issue with it, right? So I see it very similarly personally, regardless of what you're thinking, because if we really break it down, the purpose of sex is to have kids. If you would have kind of came at it at a understanding viewpoint and try to have the conversation versus this gotcha question that he tried to go like, oh, I got you with this question. None of them, all four of them, wouldn't have been able to answer the question. I'm just being honest. There's no really right answer, honestly.
very obvious that incest is wrong because one, if you have a child with this person, there might be something wrong with it. Not to mention that if somebody has known you since you were born, the influence that they'll have over your life is different than if you made the choice to actually
Right.
be with them.
Exactly.
That's why it's wrong. Here's the thing about homosexuality, because
The tough thing for me for that is like, what if you grew up together and you're not related? Is it the same? So again, like, it's tough. It's tough.
you would think that I'm homophobic because, you know, like, I guess everybody assumes I'm like extra pious and whatever
Right,
because
right,
I cover my face, right? Actually, one of my parents is a member of the LGBT community. I grew up with some cousins that were, I had friends that were all throughout elementary school and high school and stuff. I never saw morally something wrong with it. I think that the reason that it was put into Quran is simply about sustainability. You can't sustain life on Earth if people, like the majority of the population, are homosexual. I don't think it was to say that anybody's better than anybody else. We all have the capacity for love. We all just want to love and be loved.
My question is the idea that there's two consenting individuals that want to have sexual intercourse, regardless of their backgrounds. What is wrong with that?
Because we're not saying that that's the only determiner here. We're saying between two men who have not grown up together, who are not brother and brother. So it's two different things. They are two different
Okay,
things.
so let's say there's two estranged brothers that never grew up together.
My honest answer to you,
Can we pause? I would like to hear, Jad, you can make a final statement. I'd like to hear from Atia. And can we keep it about homosexuality? So let's close up incest.
You want to bring up the point about how incest results in, there's obviously things that harm that can come from that. There's also harm that has been proven to come from homosexual intercourse and a man having intercourse with another man. All the STDs, yeah, of course,
STDs are
100%.
rampant in
The
heterosexual
100%, but
relationships.
there's, it's been scientifically proven that STDs are more
Yeah.
in homosexual relationships.
Hetero.
Crazy. I don't even agree with him. I don't agree with that. I think based on how I kind of interpret it now, because we had the whole thing, like I said, with the marriage, incest marriage, and gay marriage situation. I think the best way for me to rationalize why that it's not okay for incest to be a thing is because of the potential damage it can have in society, considering the proximity that family members are with each other. Right? I think that's the best way I can rationalize, because not necessarily, well, one aspect obviously would be incest is very all encompassing. So it's not just brother and sister, it's obviously father and daughter, et cetera, right? So the power dynamic, I mean, that's just pedophilia. So we just kind of scratch that out. But in terms of, brother, sister, and them growing up, if we normalize the behavior, it would be more damaging, considering siblings, if it's normalized that they can fall in love with each other. Siblings would be most likely, I'm just guessing, to be in a relationship if that culture was normalized. Like, even though homosexuality is not normalized, there is less concern of men just falling in love with another man generally. Whereas we know when it comes to love and relationships, one of the big factors on it being established is that connection you have, that familiarity you have, that comfortability you have. And there's really very few things that comes close to siblings to each other, right? Or cousins to each other. So I'm so glad I was just thinking, my brain was turning. So that is my strongest reason why incest and gay relationships are not the same, because it's not necessarily the actions themselves, but the damages of both. And I think the damages of incest, by and large, heavily outweigh the damages of gay relationships. Now, based off an example they brought up with two estranged brothers, that personally is almost impossible for me to kind of say the difference if it's an estranged relationship. But I will still stand by, we can't set the precedent for it eventually being normalized, because we can't give them leeway for it to be okay. So that's probably how I would go about the differences between the two. I'm kind of tired of this conversation. I don't even know why I
Sexual
went
people
down.
get STDs too.
Rant.
So your argument of
the impact.
We give our new customers $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1.
The fact that it's sinful in Islam and the effect that it has on youth.
Exactly.
I think that I firsthand know the experience and the hardship people go through when they grow up in a community when they have never even heard of sex.
Muslims are unfairly targeted
All right.
by outsiders.
I was tired of that conversation. My brain was tuning. It got there. It got there eventually. I got you, boys and girls. Unfairly targeted by outsiders. Interesting. Why do they say
this weird? Interesting.
Sorry, I just had to think for a really long time.
No, yeah, fair enough.
Honestly, just being from the Middle East in general, you're gonna get targeted. I went to a conservative, secular school, and I was the only Iranian kid there, and they automatically just assume I'm Muslim because I'm Iranian. They have such disdain for it. I've had in-laws from several people I dated, as soon as they start dating me, send things about ISIS and the Taliban, articles. And which is ridiculous, because even as an ex-Muslim, I know that's not Islam. I'm pretty protective because of it, even as an ex-Muslim. If I hear anything disparaging,
Yeah, that's a big traditionalist, conservative, old style American, basically anything that is not the natural American style, that go to basic ass stereotypes, i.e. 9/11.
I'll jump on it, because I just feel like people are really Islamophobic.
I agree. Yeah, Islamophobia is real. I experienced it myself as a kid. And I know the topic was about outsiders, but I have actually noticed this issue with other ex-Muslims. Like some ex-Muslims, when they leave their faith, they become really Islamophobic, and they become really dead set on this idea that Islam is, you're supposed to go and attack disbelievers. You're supposed to do jihad like ISIS and Al-Qaeda does. I mean, they contribute to how the outsiders would unfairly think that a lot of Muslims are just terrorists, that like they want to do jihad. But the truth is, the average Muslim today in America is a peaceful person.
I just have one point to add. I really agree with this, that like, especially in the United States, yes, we're definitely targeted. Even if you look like slightly Muslim, you're targeted. Even like being Muslim from a different sect of the world, a different part of the world, like gets you targeted. A lot of times with my dad, because we're South Asian, when we go out to like the Middle East, like anywhere in the Middle East, they attack him because they think that he is South Asian, even though he's like Muslim, and they can see it, and my mom's wearing a hijab. But I really agree with that. But at the same time, I also believe that there is another part of the truth, that like there are places where there's violence occurring and Muslims are like also part of that problem. So in that case, they're also the people who are hurting others and also being hurt, and it's like a cycle of violence. I also like the point that you brought up. I think extremism is a problem no matter which sector, whether that's like a extremist Muslim or an extremist from any religion. So I think that problem exists on both aisles.
Everything y'all said is pretty valid. I mean, it's not that I don't think Muslims get like unfairly targeted. I think just everyone gets targeted nowadays. So it's just like, yes, after 9/11, I think right after that, it definitely got a little bit tough for a lot of Muslims. I think it was like severe targeting at that time. I think now, I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. Still, every once in a while, you'll experience something, like maybe me because of my beard, like you'll get like a look or something, or someone will just throw a comment. But it's nothing to the point where I'm like hurt, like, oh my God, like how could you say that?
I just want to add, I think it's a little different for students who, like kids who are in school. I tutor a lot of them. I've had like students who have told me like, even like the past year, like how they have had, they were discriminated against. And so I would say that like, I think it still exists.
Yeah, what I found for the most part is, it definitely, like even when I was in school, like yeah, I got made fun of or whatever, people would do jokes that, like terrorist jokes or whatever. But once I was the type of person, I wouldn't just sit down and like let someone make that joke about me. Someone made this exact joke in school and like about like a bomb blowing up or something because we were watching a documentary. And so in front of the whole class, I addressed them. I addressed the reason, why did you make that joke? I explained my point of view, and then he got expelled. So I think if you just let them make these jokes about you and you just sit back and kind of take it, then yeah, the bully's just gonna keep on attacking that.
You definitely handled that situation better than I did as a kid, because in elementary school, someone called me in PE class, he called me a terrorist. I said, if I was a terrorist, you would be dead right now. And what happened was I got a one-day suspension while he got a lunch detention.
I think it's important to note, like, while I think there's definitely some validity in what you're saying for sure, like it's important to stand up for yourself, for your beliefs, for your religion. I think we need to acknowledge that it's not always that easy. And there's definitely circumstances where I think the opposite is true. I think there's just as much true that like somebody can go through their life and it will get worse for them, because even so early on, we're talking about times like we were young children and we were exposed to these horrible pejorative things, and maybe those people have circumstances where when they go through life, it's just gonna get worse. They're gonna have even more hatred. There's gonna be more reasons for them to come at it in a way that's dangerous.
I do think at the end of the day, it's very important for people to kind of learn to kind of either have pride in who they are, whether, pride can't be seen as a sin, but more so kind of having the strong belief in the values that you kind of portray and the person that you are, the character that you have, and that the idea that our current society and any society ever is going to be 100% nice and kind to you is unrealistic. People are going to find differences and people are going to call out those differences, make jokes. That's just kind of how things are for the most part. You can keep your circle as close as you want, but to think that you will never encounter anybody unless you live in a hole is unrealistic. So people need to have the ability to kind of filter out the negativity, because it will always exist.
Personal desires do not have a place in Islamic faith.
For me, other than like the obvious, I'm part of the LGBT community. I was raised Muslim and I felt like I didn't have decisions or choices growing up. And when it came to Islam, I remember I'd question things in my religion class. I remember like the imam told me like women, when you go to Hajj, you can't wear like body spray, right? Or perfume. And I raised my hand during my religious class and I asked why. And I always got met with, well, because the Quran says so. Like, be quiet, Janet's the problematic kid asking me questions. I just feel like there's no room really there, even without the LGBT community part of me. Like, what you want kind of, it felt like doesn't matter. There's no room for it. It's just, it is what it is and you need to obey it.
At the end of the day, if you commit a sin and you don't seek repentance, Allah is going to punish you for it, even if your personal desires conflict with that. Because of that looming threat, it does not matter what you want. If it goes against what Allah says, then you are risking having your bones crushed in the grave, or you are risking having your skin burned off of your face. It doesn't matter how illogical you think it is. If you believe in Islam and Allah says it's bad and you go against that, you are putting yourself in a huge risk of a lot of pain and suffering.
Yeah, I think it's not that it doesn't have room for our desires, because it does. It just doesn't have room for our compulsions. And I heard this quote, someone said, "My religion is perfect, but I am not." You have to allow Islam to teach you that you've blurred the lines between your desires and your compulsions and the things that you actually need out of life. So it's really hard to be connected to God if you're connected to all these things that are calling you, pulling you different directions.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, does your standard for haram and halal vary at all? What would you base your standard off of? How were you taught those standards?
I learned them from Quran or from my upbringing, like if I don't know.
So, So I think everything you're saying is valid, and I think you can also believe all these things, even just like outside of Islam. Like I think these principles have existed like throughout time, other religions, other philosophies, and so my question is like when it comes to the more sort of confusing, like I was raised, I'm not allowed to eat pork. Okay, so that's a. And I'm sure, nobody here.
Same.
Right. And so I think at one point somebody told me that was because they're not safe to eat or like, it's dirty. Point being, there are moments, like you can definitely live your life that way, but my question is like, at what point do you question those nuances, those confusing points?
First I question why I'm questioning it. It's like, why do I want to have a different answer than what's written here? First, I question that.
Okay.
And then I'll do research and I'll say, okay, well, how were people living like before my time, before my parents, before my grandparents, and why didn't they choose to eat this animal? Well, maybe because it eats its own fecal matter or it eats its children.
So she has a sort of a selection bias behind it. Okay. Sort of a selection bias. Okay. Because that's what it sounds like to me. Is like you start off thinking that, okay, my belief is right, so let me figure out why my belief is right. That's
Children, I mean, its own fetus and stuff like that.
Well, I understand what I'm saying is like, how do you deal with the logic of it? Because there's many ways to argue around it.
If I can't is it okay if I interject here? Thank you. So essentially, there's a lot of things that you may not understand why something is. Essentially, what you're saying is, if something is not allowed and you don't understand why it's not allowed, how do you kind of go about being okay with this thing not being allowed? If God is telling us not to do something or to do something, even if we don't understand the wisdom behind it, it's the fact that we know that He's the most knowledgeable, so we trust in the fact that whatever He's telling us to do or not to do, that is the best thing for us.
Blind faith.
Blind loyalty.
Yeah.
So blind loyalty.
So
in terms of because we believe that He is the most knowledgeable. So I do question, obviously, if I don't understand something, I'll ask someone of more knowledge, and if they can't give me an answer as to why something is the way that it is, then we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet know what's best. And at that point, I put my faith in God. That's what faith is.
There's just a small hiccup in both of your like signs.
Faith is very valid. I'll never deny faith. Faith is very strong, it's very powerful, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Scientific
Personally,
method
that's what I think.
here, which is that why am I questioning? And then there's your part. If I don't get the right answer or an answer that makes sense to me, I keep asking, I keep asking, I keep asking. But if you don't get it, then there's this kind of cognitive dissonance that now needs to exist.
I think like a good way to put it is like part of existing as a human being is questioning everything. That's how we developed everything. That's how we grow and adapt.
I want to add something really quick. I know that like there has been a lot of questions with what he said, especially you guys saying like that's blind faith. I think that there is like I see your point, but there's a lot of merit, and like I agree that like meaning of life is questioning things. However, if you keep questioning everything, you're going to have the most doubtful, horrible, untrusting life in the entire universe. The goal of life is to be in peace, right? So I think that like we can only question some of the things, and I think personally from my questioning, I have found the answers to which that has led me to trust the God that I believe in, and that is why I also believe in the other things that he tells me to subscribe to, because I believe that that is good for me. So it's not always that every Muslim or anybody who subscribes to religion is like blindly believing in everything. No, they have a trusting relationship with that form of God or that religion or that ideology, and therefore they choose to subscribe to other ideals.
Do you think you'd be happier as a boy?
What the fuck? Gendertransformation.com? What the hell is that? What? What is this? What is going on? Epoch TV? What is Epoch TV? What is going on? What is Epoch TV? Is this a new thing of conservative TV? Or is this... I don't care enough.
Totally relate. There's a lot of insecurity here. There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of thinking. I
can tell.
I think it is a much more difficult and much more noble path to take, through the chaos, through the unknown, through the lack of prescription, through questioning, rather than just kind of taking the carrot and the stick of heaven and hell.
I completely disagree with this notion. And it's crazy for me to say that because I'm not religious, but I completely disagree with this notion. It's not more noble. That is a terrible... you're putting yourself on a high horse, buddy. Because all of your questions, you'll never be answered until you die. You don't know. Everything that you think you know about science is theoretical. It's not 100% correct. So... you and your path is just as... what's the best way to put this? It's just as uncertain as a religious path. That's why I say I'm agnostic, because there's really no way for me to go out there and say that religion's 100% incorrect. I've seen a lot of very damning evidence that a religion, is just not valid enough for me. But there's any truth you go through, whether it's existentialism, whether it's a nihilistic point of view, whether it's a deterministic point of view, regardless, any question that you have in terms of the bigger answers and the biggest questions of society and life and as a whole and your personal desires, it will lead you to a very emotional and very subjective point of view. It won't lead you anywhere. So the most important thing to have is a set list of values and structure to live your life by that you think is the most correct. And for people who are Muslim, that is Muslim. For people who are Christians, it's Christianity. So, or Islam. Did I say Muslim? I'm an idiot. It's Islam. Sorry about that. So, and if it's you for being atheist, it's being atheist. So, in terms of the most noble, I think being religious is the most noble, 100%. I don't agree with this guy. See, I'm just an objective man, bro. I'm just here telling the truth based on what I know. That's all I do.
Sense of
morals. So, others usually.
Yeah, right. So I'm saying if we were all left to just decide what is okay and what is not okay, do you guys not see that it would just be left to individual opinions?
No, I think there's like a pretty basic understanding, just as a human, of what's right and wrong. I'm just a
No, there's not. There is, but there's not. There is, but there's not. I have a whole theory on the creation of morals, so technically there is, but people's understanding on why it is how it is means it's not, right? Like now it's like not. The creation of it is, but if you took someone in a vacuum without any external factors and external influences, they won't have the same moral structure in general. They'll have certain principles that will align eventually. Maybe, I don't even know, because they won't have the proper humanistic influences to really understand what it even means to be human, because they don't have the environment to be human. So I can't even say that necessarily.
Really scientific person. I'm gonna do my research. I have engineers for parents, so that gives me peace.
Me too.
Yeah, so it's my different kind of peace. I don't think people are just atheists or non-religious people are running rampant without a set of rules. I think just to be a good person, religion aside, there's just pretty standard things that
Yes, but no, I don't
should just
necessarily
follow.
believe.
I see your point of view, and I think that that's why, like what she said and what you said, like I understand both of you so equally, because I feel like at parts of my life I struggled with feeling so much guilt. Like,
Okay, I heard enough. I don't need to hear anymore. Interesting video. Interesting video. Honestly, very interesting.